So hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in as always, and somewhere completely different this week. We're in the wonderful blustery rainy Yorkshire, and more specifically the Yorkshire Dales National Park. I believe it's a national park, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, this is somewhere that I've never been. I've never even been walking here. Don't think honestly I've ever even driven through here, unless I did when I was a child. But it's been on the old to-do list for photography for a while now, so it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I've actually been inspired to come to this location by a fellow photographer and actually a fellow YouTube vlogger as well, a bloke called James Burns. If you haven't checked out James's channel already, I'd highly recommend it. He spends a lot of time in the Lake District, he loves the fell walk, and he spends a lot of time in these sorts of areas as well. So I'll leave a link to his channel in the video description below. Go and check him out after this video. But yeah, it's thanks for the inspiration, James. And as you can see all around me, this is really the main inspiration for why I wanted to come here. It's really interesting from a geological standpoint. We've got all these beautiful limestone pavements. This area is so sort of famous for, it's almost like a plateau. But one thing that's really inspired me above everything to come here is all these gorgeous trees that you can see scattered about, these beautiful windswept trees. And I just love a windswept tree this time of year in winter. And I think if I can work with them as foreground subjects, we should be able to get some cracking images today, because the background, as I'm sure you can see, is fantastic. We've got gorgeous Ingleborough here, one of the Yorkshire three peaks, which is shrouded in cloud. The weather conditions, generally speaking, aren't nice, but for what I want to achieve with my photography today, it's spot on. So top drawer stuff, let's go and explore. These spectacular limestone pavements are the result of glaciers grinding down and scouring the earth during the last ice age. After that, the corrosive effects of thousands of years worth of acid rain has led to the formation of deep crevices, and thus this stunning prodigy we have today. It's going to make for some cracking foreground interest for our photography this afternoon. So the rain has actually died down a little bit now, which means it's good because it's easier to do landscape photography, so to speak, because we're not getting drenched. But it means that we haven't got as much texture in the clouds as actually in that direction. The clouds are looking a lot more gloomy and foreboding, which is kind of what I wanted. That's the sacrifice that I was making coming out today and getting drenched, was I wanted some of these skies. But it's not looking bad over Ingleborough. You know, this is the direction that I'm shooting in now. Now, in the introduction, I mentioned very briefly that we've got all these beautiful lone trees scattered about these limestone pavements, and that's really what I wanted to try and utilise today in at least one of my photographs. And I've managed to find one which I think is going to work pretty well. It's not going to be absolutely incredible. You know, I've got a lot to live up to after last week's video up on Helm Crag, but you know, it's pleasant, it's going to be nice, and in many ways it's quite what I envisaged before I came here. Now, I think this is a hawthorn tree. If you watch me regularly, you know what I'm like with my trees. Absolutely hopeless, but I'm trying my best to learn. I'm going to go for either a hawthorn or a mountain ash tree. I'm swaying more towards a hawthorn. If you know what it is, please let me know in the comments below, because like I say, I'm always trying to learn. But what's most important here is it's working for me photographically. So that's a subject that I really wanted, you know, before I came here. A nice tree like this. We've got Ingleborough in the background. The sky's looking all right, you know, there's a little bit of texture. We can definitely work with that. And then finally is the foreground element, of course, these beautiful limestone pavements. And what I really wanted to try and find, which I think I have, is these gorgeous crevices that you can see here. I wanted to try and use them as a little bit of a leading line. I will say as well at this stage, if you're ever going to come here and it's been raining, be cautious. It's really dodgy. These are so slippy. It's like walking across ice. And of course, because you've got these big deep crevices, it's a little bit dangerous. It's a bit dodgy. So watch your step. But yeah, I think this is going to work. Unfortunately, I've forgotten my wide angle lens again, which would have been ideal for this situation. But I think I can make it work with my 16 to 35. So I'm going to get set up here. Right, so I'm finally set up, guys. It's been a little bit of a faff, if I'm being honest with you. The wind and rain has picked up a little bit again. However, that's really good, to be honest, because in the background on Ingleborough, it's looking really dramatic and atmospheric, and it's working really well for this photograph. Now, I mentioned just briefly before that I forgot to bring my wide angle lens. In all honesty, I didn't forget it. I just kind of thought that I wouldn't need it here, which now in hindsight is just ridiculous, because for this situation, and actually this location, it would have been perfect, ideal. So a little bit frustrating, but at least I know, you know, if I come here next time, or when I come here next time, I'll definitely be back here, then I should bring the old wide angle lens. So a lot of the things that I'm going to explain to you technically, the reason why I'm doing it is just because I forgot the old wide angle. Now, first things first, the tripod you can see is set up in a little bit of an unorthodox position here, and I've got it pretty much as low as possible without adding more faff to what I'm doing here. But the hard thing that the most difficult thing that I've had to do here is level out the tripod, because I'm doing a little bit of a vertical panorama. That's why I'm set up in a portrait dimension here. So that's all nicely leveled out. And I'm taking 4 photographs here, but the actual panel itself is just going to be 2 photographs from left to right. So one photograph is going to be there with the tree on the left hand side of the frame. One photograph is going to be about there with Ingleborough, that beautiful peak, on the right hand side of the frame. However, I said I'm taking 4 images. I'm doing that because I'm basically focus stacking both photographs as well. So just to explain what that means, for the left hand side image, I'm taking 2 shots. So I'm taking one shot where I'm focusing on the rocks here in the foreground. I usually don't focus stack, but what I really want to do is capture the detail in these beautiful limestone pavements, because I think there's such an important element to this photograph and to the story that I'm trying to tell here. So one photograph focused on the rocks right here in the foreground, and then one photograph focused on the hills in the background, both exactly the same composition. Then I'll merge them together, then I've got perfect focus all the way throughout the image. Then I'm going to turn the camera to the right, get that second photograph of the panorama, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the focus stack. One image focused on the rocks here in the foreground, one image focused on beautiful Ingleborough there in the background, and then I'll merge all them 4 photographs together somehow to eventually get what would, honestly, it'd just be a sort of wide angle effect photograph where we're getting some nice foreground interest and of course some really nice background interest as well. So moral of the story for myself, a little bit of a lesson learned: do a little bit of research and make sure I bring the right lenses to the location. Now compositionally, I'll explain briefly because I think it's quite simple. I'm just going to jump into the scene here. Working from back to front, we've got Ingleborough in the background. Don't need to say much about that. Gorgeous peak, one of the Yorkshire 3 peaks I think I mentioned, and it's just so dramatic and moody and atmospheric with that gorgeous cloud that's shrouding the top. And then we come a bit further in, we've got this gorgeous tree here, which I think is a hawthorn tree, like I mentioned. And that's actually doing 2 things. It's a nice element in itself, you know, it's a nice subject. It's telling a nice story of what this location's all about, these lone trees. But it's also helping to balance out the image, you know, that's contrasting with Ingleborough, so it's a nice balance for the left and right of the frame. And then finally, of course, I wanted to make sure I captured some of these limestone pavements. But what I've done here is I found this one crevice here, which I think, I'm not 100% sure, I think it's going to act as a really nice lead-in line right up to that tree. I'd like to have found something a little bit more simple, a little bit more uniformed. You know, I'd have liked a nice straight crevice right up to that tree, but you know, this is going to be all right. And if anything, it's just going to be a nice little bit of foreground interest. Whoa. All shot, f9, 1/15 of a second, and ISO 100. Just a quick moment to express my gratitude for all coffees purchased for me on my Ko-fi page. I'm now at a staggering 72% of my Scotland goal, and that's all thanks to you guys. If you'd like to help me reach 100%, there's a link in the video description below. Thank you so much. Right, so if you can hear me for the wind, I've got another little photograph in mind now. You'll probably be able to see right off in the background over there on the left hand side of your screen is a beautiful viaduct, and a very famous viaduct in these parts. It's called Ribblehead Viaduct and I hope to grab a photograph of it. However, I'm going to do something a little bit different. It's actually going to be in line with my project that I spoke about 2 or 3 weeks ago when I was up at Bleak Tarn in the lakes, and I said I wanted to, you know, spend this year intermittently, you know, not all the time, come into quite famous subjects or famous locations, just trying to get my own take on it. And I know, you know, this is something that a lot of landscape photographers do. It's something that's kind of natural to us. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to work really, really well in line with that project. And I've got a little bit of a shot in mind. So I'm clinging on to my tripod for dear life as these North Yorkshire winds have picked up. It is so blustery, and the old video camera just took a tumble. As it was falling, I thought, you know what, that's destined to be smashed to pieces, but somehow the camera fell, so it was kind of leaning over into one of the crevices up on this limestone pavement, and the tripod itself took all the impact, so I was extremely lucky. Now onto this photograph. Yeah, Ribblehead Viaduct is a beautiful subject, very popular with landscape photographers. I've seen tons of images of the viaduct where most people seem to go quite close to it, and you know, I've seen a lot of shots with the sun shining through some of them beautiful arches, and they look absolutely awesome. But for me, this is, you know, like I said, going really, really well in line with this project that I'm trying to do, taking photographs of, you know, popular subjects or in popular locations, and just trying to get a completely different perspective. And this is working perfectly for that. So a little bit funny with the settings here, and that's just because of this wind. I need a quick shutter speed basically, even though I've got this awesome tripod, nice heavy camera on top, it's still shaking all over the shop, and because I'm using my long lens zoomed in at 55mm, all that shake, all that camera shake from the wind is accentuated, so I need that quick shutter speed. So there's two ways I can get that quick shutter speed. I can either shoot at f4, or I can raise my ISO to allow me to shoot at f9, which would probably be preferable, and that's because f4, I'm focusing on the limestone pavements here in the foreground, and f4 means that focus is kind of falling off as we get further back towards that viaduct. But I'm going to take that shot anyway, because I've got a small little inkling that I might actually prefer that when I get home and I edit these photographs. But yeah, then the second photograph's going to be at f9 ISO 400, which means it'll be a little bit more of an even focus throughout the image. The viaduct itself will be a little bit more in focus, but I'll see which one I prefer. So I'm going to grab that shot now whilst we've got some nice moody skies over the viaduct. I've been waiting for a while. You can probably see some of these stormy clouds behind me. They've been making their way over towards the viaduct, and that's just helping us, you know, create a little bit of atmosphere in this image. Composition, bottom half of the frame is these beautiful limestone pavements, and I've found another little crevice that's kind of leading us up, curving up through the bottom of the photograph, right into the middle, into them fields, into that viaduct, and then into that stormy sky. And the old portrait dimension's working out really, really well here. A lot like one of the photographs I got last week when I came down from Helm Crag. It's as simple as this. I just don't need to capture so much of the landscape on the left and right hand side of my frame. It's nice and narrow, it's just a crevice, a little bit of the limestone pavements, the viaduct, and like I say, that moody sky, creating a little bit of atmosphere. So I was going to make that last photograph of Ribblehead Viaduct the last image of the day. However, I've been seduced back up towards the limestone pavements where I took my first photograph, very close to where I took the first image actually. But I'm glad that I did come back up, because I think this is going to be a decent shot. Now the first thing that I like about this is it just seems to include all the elements that have been kind of the story of my day. You see, we've got this beautiful dry stone wall. There's tons of these knocking about here in the Yorkshire Dales. We've got this gorgeous moorland throughout most of the photograph. we've got, of course, beautiful Ingleborough, which is going to be a background interest, just like in my first image, which shows, you know, there's those gorgeous atmospheric conditions that we've got with that cloud sort of sitting on top of it. And then even on the very right hand side of the frame on this photograph, we're going to capture a little bit of these limestone pavements here, which is top draw. Now the settings are a little bit funny again, just like my last image, just because of the wind. I'm shooting this at 1/30th of a second, f8 and ISO 400. ISO 400, just so I can get 1/30th of a second. That even shows you how dark and sort of dingy it is today, because I'm only getting 1/30th of a second. Still a fairly slow shutter speed, but I'm just waiting for that wind to stop, which it does every now and again, believe me. Quickly grab the photograph and then 1/30th of a second is fine. The composition, you can probably see pretty much what I'm doing here, but we've got this beautiful dry stone wall here, which is going to be starting on the left hand side of the frame and making its way through, and it's kind of infinity. It disappears somewhere in the top left hand third of the frame. We've even got a little step over the wall there as a little bit of foreground interest. And then, yeah, like I say, all the other elements, the moorland, little bit of the limestone pavement on the right hand side, top draw. I'm focusing probably about 1/3, between 1/3 and 1/2 of the way up this wall, and that seems to be working fine. I'm not going to bother focus stacking or anything here. But what's probably going to be the last photograph, a decent one to finish off the day. So I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, because it's fairly important with regards to this channel, but I'm now going to be releasing 2 videos per week, which I really hope is good news for you guys. I'd really like to think it is. However, it's really important to note that I'm now going to cease the Tuesday 6 PM videos, just because I need to change the days around a bit and spread it out, you know, throughout the week. So it's now going to be Thursday at 6 PM, just like this video, and then every Sunday at 6 PM. So like I said, I hope that's good news for you guys. I just really want to get out and about even more, and there's no excuse why I can't be doing 2 videos a week, and I thoroughly enjoy making them. So yeah, I shall see you guys on Sunday evening at 6 PM. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you then. Out.